My dear students and viewers, I am Puranjay Biswas, Professor and Chairman, Department of English, Dhaka College, affiliated with the University of Dhaka. I welcome you to my today's lecture. My today's lecture is on Aristotle's Poetics. My dear students, you know that the Poetics is the most antique, most scientific and most recognized literary critique written in defense of poetry. The Poetics, composed around 330 BCE, was preserved as students' lecture notes. In this Poetics, we find two parts. The first part deals with mainly tragedy and the second part deals with comedy. But the second part is somehow lost. However, our main concern today is tragedy. We should know Aristotle's concept of tragedy. First of all, let me define tragedy according to Aristotle. Tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and a certain magnitude. In language embellished with this kind of artistic devices appropriate to the several parts of the play, presented in the form of action, not narration, with incidents arousing pity and fear, bringing about catharsis or purgation of such emotions. So this is the definition of Aristotle about tragedy. Now let me explain the definition and find out the characteristics of tragedy. At first, tragedy is an imitation. Second condition is that it represents an action, and the action must be serious. Now, what does Aristotle means by serious? By serious, Aristotle means that the action must be very much important, dealing with some suffering. Okay? Now, by complete, Aristotle means the action which is self-contained, having unity, wholeness, with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now, what does Aristotle mean by certain magnitude? By certain magnitude, Aristotle means that tragedy must have a reasonable and considerable length. It must not be unlimited as an epic. Then, action is presented through language. And what type of language? Is it very simple and ordinary? No. The language should be embellished with this kind of artistic devices. And then the language turns dignified. Next, it is presented in the form of action. Now, what does Aristotle mean by the form of action? It means that tragedy is a matter of spectacle. It is a matter of a stage performance or display that the audience can see. Now, tragedy represents some incidents arousing pity and fear. What does Aristotle mean by pity and fear? Fear is the terror that comes to the mind of the audience observing the catastrophe that the protagonist undergoes. And this fear prevents the audience from committing this fault that the tragic character undergoes. Now, what is pity? And why is this pity? Pity means the sympathy that comes to the mind of the audience observing the sufferings of the tragic character. Why do we feel pity for the tragic character? When we think that the tragic character suffers much more than he deserves, than his hamartia or tragic flaw. So, pity and fear must be aroused by the incidents of a tragedy. Then, catharsis. This is very important. What does Aristotle mean by catharsis? This is a Greek term. Catharsis means a kind of purgation. Purgation of what? Purgation of feelings of pity and fear. Catharsis is a kind of tragic relief or tragic pleasure. In fact, there is a kind of gradual reduction of the obsession of the emotions of pity and fear. It is also called purgation, moral purgation. So, catharsis is a mental cleansing or intellectual clarification. And this is very important. A tragedy must have a cathartic effect on the mind of the audience. My students, now let me mention the 6 constituents of tragedy. According to Aristotle, the 6 constituents are plot, then character, thought, diction, song, and at last spectacle. Now, what does plot mean? Plot means arrangement of incidents which are interrelated and interlinked. And a plot must have wholeness and unity, constituting a beginning, a middle, and an end. Then character. What is character? Character means the nature of the participants. Character means nature, behavior, manners of the participants. Thought means opinion, views, and thoughts that are reflected through the participants. Now, diction. Diction means the proper selection of words, both in prose and verse. Now, song. Song means choral song, which is musical device in a classical tragedy. At last, a spectacle. What does a spectacle mean? Spectacle means performance on a stage or a stage show that the audience can see. So tragedy is not a matter of narration. It is a matter of action acted on the stage. While epic is a matter of narration, tragedy is a matter of spectacle. So these are the 6 elements of tragedy. Now, there are some quantitative parts of a tragedy. According to Aristotle, these quantitative parts of tragedy are prologue, episode, exode, and chorus. These are the parts of tragedy, 6 parts of tragedy, and 6 elements or constituents of tragedy. Now let me discuss Aristotle's concept of plot in detail. I have already mentioned that plot is an ordering of incidents. It is well arrangement of incidents which must be interrelated, interlinked, having wholeness. According to Aristotle, plot is the primary element of tragedy, while character is secondary. Plot is also called the lifeblood of a tragedy. Aristotle believes that there could not be a tragedy without plot, but there could be without character. So, plot is the first concern and character is secondary. Now, a well-organized plot is characterized by, number 1, unity and wholeness, having considerable length. It must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. There are 2 kinds of plots. Number 1, simple plot. Number 2, complex plot. Now, what is a simple plot? Simple plot is that type of plot in which change of fortune comes without reversal or discovery. Now, what is a complex plot? A complex plot is that plot in which change of fortune comes about either by reversal or by discovery or by the both. Aristotle suggests the complex plot accompanied by both reversal and discovery, and this is the best one for tragedy. We can find 3 major elements in a plot. And what are those elements? Number 1, Number 1, discovery or anagnorisis. Number 2, reversal or peripeteia. Number 3, tragic calamity. Now, what is discovery or anagnosis? Discovery means to come to the light of truth from the darkness of ignorance. Discovery helps the protagonist to know the unknown truth. For example, Oedipus in Oedipus Rex didn't know his parental identity at first, but at the end of the play, he comes to know his parents. So this is discovery. Now, what is reversal? Reversal means sudden turn of incident from one state of affair to its opposite. Suppose Oedipus was waiting for the messenger to disclose him the fact that he was the son of Polybus and Merope. It was his expectation. But what did the messenger disclose? He disclosed that Oedipus was the foster child of King Polybus and Queen Merope. So this comes as a reversal to Oedipus, which changes the whole course of his life from fortune to misfortune. This sudden, unexpected, opposite turn of incident is called reversal. Now, what is calamity? Calamity is the serious catastrophe, sufferings, downfall of the character. My dear students, now a plot must arouse pity and fear in the mind of the audience, and a plot aims at catharsis or purgation. And at last, the classical dramatic unities. You know that there are three dramatic unities: the unity of action, the unity of place, and the unity of time. In fact, Aristotle speaks of the unity of action. He once mentions the unity of time in Poetics, but he never speaks of the unity of place. However, it is attributed to Aristotle by the neoclassical writers. So a classical tragedy must have these three unities, though Aristotle didn't advocate for the two unities. He advocates only for the unity of action. My dear students, now let me focus on Aristotle's concept of plot structure through a diagram. Now look at the whiteboard. I am showing you plot structure through a diagram. Now you can see there are three parts. First beginning, then middle, and at last end. You can see please. Beginning refers to introduction or exposition of action. Then it gradually develops and there is the rising action. Step by step, there are some episodes that create rising action, and then it reaches the climax, and climax is the complication of a tragedy, and it is called the middle. And then from the climax there is gradual falling action, and at last there is catastrophe or the downfall, the serious tragic end of the play. So this is called Poetics pyramid. Through this pyramid we can understand Aristotle's plot structure. Now I mentioned that there are four main parts in a tragedy. First, prologue. Look at this figure. The first part is prologue. Now what is prologue? Prologue is the first opening scene which reflects the background and the purpose of the dramatist is focused. Then you can see the parrot. Parrot is the first utterance of the chorus, and this is called parrot, focusing the major issues that are going to take part in the tragedy. Then there is an episode. This is an episode. What is an episode? Episode is that part of a tragedy which comes between two complete choral songs. Here is a choral song, there is also a choral song, and this middle part between two choral songs is called episode. Here is another episode. There is another episode, and there are two songs. And there are two songs, and this part is called episode. This is an episode. It is also an episode. Now, at last, there is exode. What is exode? Exode is the concluding part or the final scene in a tragedy, after which no choral song comes, no chorus comes. So this is just the final scene of a tragedy. So prologue is the opening scene, beginning scene, focusing the background, and exode is the final scene. And there are some episodes, and there are two choral songs. There are two choral songs, and between those two songs there is an episode. There is also stasimon. Stasimon is the view of chorus at the end of each episode. So stasimon is also important as part of tragedy. So here I have discussed the plot structure as well as tragedy structure, focusing the parts.